Alright, today we're going to unpack the work of the late psychiatrist Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. She put forward this really powerful and honestly pretty intense psychoanalytic theory on racism. Her whole point was that if you really want to understand the world, you first have to get a handle on what she called the global system of white supremacy. And this quote, which she often used from the thinker Neely Fuller, is really the key to everything. Dr. Welsing's entire argument hangs on this idea. If you don't grasp that racism is a functional system, then trying to understand politics, economics, or culture is just going to leave you confused. So, this is our starting block. So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll define what she meant by racism as a system. Then we'll look at the core motivation she said was behind it. We'll explore how it touches every part of life, decode some of its hidden language, and finally, look at the choices people have when faced with it. Okay, first things first, Dr. Welsing's theory demands that we completely rethink the word racism. We're not talking about someone's personal feelings, being prejudiced or a bigot. In her view, it's so much bigger than that. And here is her core definition. For Dr. Welsing, the terms racism and white supremacy were basically interchangeable, and they didn't describe an attitude, they described a global power system. And what's the purpose of this system? Simple: to ensure the genetic survival of the small minority of people on the planet who classify themselves as white. See how that shifts the focus from individual feelings to a systemic goal? So, if it is a system, what's the engine? What's driving it? Well, looking at it through her psychoanalytic lens, Dr. Welsing argued that the core motivation is a really deep, often subconscious, fear. And that fear, she says, is rooted in a basic demographic fact. People classified as white make up less than 1/10 of the world's population. That simple math creates a dynamic of a tiny numerical minority in a world that is overwhelmingly populated by people of color. Now here's the crucial link in her theory. Dr. Welsing, as a physician, pointed out that the ability to produce melanin, the pigment that gives skin its color, is a genetically dominant trait. From that biological fact, she theorized that there's a subconscious fear within the white collective of what she called genetic annihilation, the idea that through mixing with the world's genetic majority, the white gene could essentially be bred out of existence. And this story she used to tell just perfectly illustrates the point. She often talked about a conversation she had with the white separatist Tom Metzger. She asked him flat out, what percentage of white people have this fear? And his supposed answer was, nearly all of them, but they're too ashamed or afraid to ever say it out loud. For her, that was a huge confirmation of this hidden anxiety that she believed powered the whole system. Okay, so let's get into the mechanics, the real nuts and bolts of her theory. How does this system, which she says is driven by this deep-seated fear, actually work? How does it manage to shape pretty much every corner of our society? Again, building on Neely Fuller's work, Dr. Welsing laid out these 9 fundamental areas of human activity. The argument is that for the system to work, to maintain power and ensure survival, it has to control and operate within all of them. We're talking economics, who gets the capital; law, who gets punished and who gets protected; education, what gets taught; even entertainment. It has to be a total, all-encompassing system. Let's just zoom in on one of those: entertainment. Dr. Welsing argued that after the gains of the civil rights movement, which was built on a foundation of black pride and self-respect, the system had to react. And it did, she says, by promoting a wave of negative imagery, like in the so-called blaxploitation films. By flooding the culture with images of pimps and drug dealers, her theory goes, the system could help neutralize that new sense of self-respect, which was seen as a threat to the status quo. This next part is maybe the most talked about piece of her work: her method of decoding the system's subconscious language. She believes this core anxiety about genetic survival bubbles up and expresses itself symbolically all over the place, especially in places you'd least expect, like our games and sports. For instance, look at her analysis of ball games. She basically split them into 2 symbolic categories. On one side, you've got games played with big brown balls, football, basketball, which she said symbolically represent the genetically dominant global majority. And on the other, games played with small white balls, golf, tennis, billiards, representing the genetically recessive minority. For her, these games are a symbolic drama playing out that fundamental demographic tension. And her deconstruction of billiards, or pool, is the classic example of this. So, picture it. The game starts with a rack of multicolored balls clustered together on the table. This, she says, represents the world's people of color. So what's the objective of the game? You take the one white cue ball and use it to systematically eliminate all the colored balls. You knock them one by one into the pockets until they're all gone from the playing surface. And how do you win? The game is over when only the white ball is left on the table. In Dr. Welsing's view, this isn't just a game of pool. It's a perfect, subconscious ritual, a metaphor for the system's ultimate goal, ensuring white genetic survival on a planet that's dominated by color. So if you're living inside what she's describing as this total system of domination, what do? How do you respond? Well, Dr. Welsing laid out a framework, again citing Fuller, of 4 possible ways a victim can react to any system of control. And here they are. First, you can submit. Just accept the system as it is. Second, you can cooperate, which means playing by the system's rules, stopping at a red light, paying for your groceries. Third, you can resist by speaking out and actively challenging the system. And the fourth, destruction of, is for those who continue to resist even when their own life is on the line. When you put it all together, Dr. Welsing's work really forces a major shift in how you look at the world. It moves racism from being just a bad idea in some people's minds to being a functional, planetary system designed for survival. So we'll leave you with this to think about. What does it really mean to confront a system rather than just trying to change an idea?